Perfect. Well, officially welcome everyone. I believe most of us is probably in North America. Otherwise, people will probably not be here. It's super early still in Australia. It's super late in Brazil. So welcome everyone. Please, while we are doing introductions, let us know where you are, what kind of design you do, or what are you currently doing, or why you're passionate about design. Please share it with us in the chat. My name is Luna. I'm the program manager for the Design Leadership Program. I work at Echoes. I've been collaborating with Alan since last year. It has been almost a year, believe it or not, Alan. Life goes super, super fast.
I know.
We studied together during Design Leadership Season 1, and I'm so honored that he's now coming back as our North American ambassador. So welcome back. I would like to introduce you to Echoes because we are now migrating to the US, but since last year, no one here probably knew about us because our major presence is in Brazil. I'm Brazilian, and also in Asia, Australia. So welcome again. We are an independent global innovation lab driven by design. It's such an honor to see the big movement Echoes is doing, especially considering how small we still are in a way. We have 3 business models: the School of Design Thinking, Echoes Innovation Projects and Ventures. School of Design Thinking is what is hosting us tonight through the Design Leadership Program. We help business create value and innovation for good. And we're helping people and organizations master the innovation mindset, skills, and tools. Our global team, mainly based in Europe, Brazil, and Australia, apart from me here in the US for now. I hope to have more people joining me. We already, how can I say, we train over 100,000 people so far. And considering that we only started our digital transformation in 2020, thinking that we train over 70,000 people over the past 2 years is massive. It's such a big accomplishment. We are part of the Global Design Thinking Alliance. We are the only innovation lab that it's part of this alliance. And it's so beautiful to see that Echoes has been honored through our extensive research and design leadership, and future design. And this is design leadership, which is our main pillar now, I would say, for the past 2 years. Season 2 is starting on May 9th. It's quite an extensive and I would say even deep course. Alan can say more than me. Well, maybe we can say just as much because we were there together. It's quite intense. It's a beautiful journey. We have amazing minds from multiple perspectives coming to join us to create the parameter of what design leadership is and will be for the next 5 to 10 years. I'm not going to go very in depth in this, but if you guys, anyone that is interested and wants to sit down and have a conversation about design leadership and the structure of the course, it's with me that you'll be talking. So please reach out. This is the journey. We go through pretty much anything that is within those 4 spheres, which is you and yourself. As a leader, you need to understand who you are, because that's the base of what it is that you're going to be extending to the people that you're leading. It's about you and other people. So your capability of listening, understanding, and bringing back value to people's lives and their work. It's a lot about you and the outcomes that you and your team are creating, because we want to be meaningful. We want to be ethical with our job. And it's a lot about you and the systems around you, understanding stakeholders, understanding multiple perspectives and needs. This is some of the people that are joining us. We have a couple more names signing contracts in the next few weeks. I am excited to announce, but I can't. But so far, be super inspired with the group that we already have joining us. Again, starting on May 9th. And goes all the way until August. We have a little break because I know in the North Hemisphere, we have vacations coming up. Summer, it's around the corner finally. But with no further, Alan, the stage is yours. Alexa and Andrew, I'm so happy to be here. I'll be simply just co-facilitating for Alan, whatever it is that you need. I'm right here, but I just want to hear what you guys have to say. So welcome and thank you so much for being here tonight.
Of course, it's our pleasure.
Alan, thank you for getting this group back together. This is wonderful.
For
Yep.
sure. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Excited to be here with you all. Saw a lot of familiar faces, which just warmed my heart. So thank you for that. I also saw Gada from Egypt joining. Thank you for taking the effort despite the time differences. My name is Alan. I'll be your host today. As Luna mentioned, I did a program last year when I was building our UX team at my company. So a lot of the learnings and are pretty timely and applicable. So now I've become their ambassador to promote the program so more people know about this. I always feel like there's a lot of courses, books about leadership. There's a lot of resources for IC designers, but there's not enough resources and courses for design leadership combined. So this to me feels like a pretty good combination. So if you guys are interested, definitely check it out. A little bit about me before we um, pass the baton to Alexa and Andrew. I'm a senior director of UX at EAB. We help high school students find their dream colleges through virtual tours, college search and matching sites, and a exclusive social network for them to connect with prospective students and current students. On the flip side, we also help colleges find great candidates for their programs and deliver insights that drive their marketing enrollment efforts. Also spent a couple of years in the VR and AR space before that, and even before that at a design agency. That's where I met amazing Drew and Alexa to be able to work with them. So without further ado, I'm gonna let Alexa introduce herself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. As Alan mentioned, Alan and Andrew and I worked together at an agency called Moment years ago, and I'm currently executive director at Verizon, overseeing customer experience design for our consumer group. So I lead or my team is responsible for all of the sales and support kinds of interactions that you have with Verizon across customer facing interfaces like app and web, as well as for the rep facing interfaces that we have in our retail environments and telesales environments and things like that. It's a dauntingly large ecosystem, but it's very exciting. And I've been doing that for about 4 years. And prior to that, I spent over a decade at Moment, where I worked on things like media and entertainment apps, financial services, and things like that. So my background and my focus is very much, or my heart and background as a designer is very much in the information architecture side of things and deep usability, customer centric research and product design. I actually studied physical product design before transitioning into a digital product design space.
That's awesome.
Cool. I suppose I can go next. My name is Andrew Gold. I go by Drew for some of you already know that. Yeah, my background is kind of interesting because I went to school for finance and accounting, and somehow I ended up in design. But I suppose so many presentations in business school, when you were considered the PowerPoint guy, gave me enough hints that maybe I consider another field that might be a great combination of all those skills. Traditionally after school, like my background was in business consulting and technology consulting for a little while. And then I just found my way to user experience, and had wonderful people like Alan and Alexa teach me along the way. In 2018, I arrived at running kind of my own shop called Grand Studio, along with another colleague of mine that was formerly from that Moment contingent. And we've been running a digital product, service design, all-encompassing UX design studio ever since. So it's been about 4 years now. We've learned a ton in terms of how to run a studio and how to build a culture, and how to maintain that culture through multiple projects with Fortune 500 companies that have their own cultures and have their own ways of doing things. So I can certainly speak from the agency side in terms of the differences in kind of what you see across those different spectrums.
Great, Drew. And we do miss your sense of humor a lot. So
I'll try to bring as much as I
crack
can.
some jokes during the session. All right, so we're ready to dive in. Today's session is gonna be about leading design teams at agencies versus in-house. We're gonna kick off with the first topic, which is articulating the value of design. This is something that even seasoned design leaders will face at different time of a career. Depending on the maturity of the company, you will have different strategy, different way of dealing with that. I will even say for agencies where Drew is currently at, that's even more important, right? Because that makes a difference between getting the work versus not getting the contract. So maybe we can start this question from Drew's end and we'll move to Alexa. Any tips or strategy around articulating the value of design, Drew, you would like to share with all of us?
Yeah, I think this is a hard one for sure. And I know a lot of folks struggle with this depending on if they're in-house or on the agency side, especially with clients. I mean, it all depends on from our side, the type of clients that you have or are trying to acquire. From a client's perspective, you may have a lot of non-designers involved in the process with you. And, from what has worked from our standpoint is doing our best to bring them into the process with us, to not make it like, oh, those are some designers going over there and doing some stuff and it's going to come back and it's going to look great. And that will all happen, of course. But, we feel that as much as possible, where schedules allow, bringing your clients into the process of all the design activities that you're doing, looking to lightly mentor them through the process. And, essentially they can become designers too without that title. We have found that, bringing them a part of the process creates more buy-in towards the ultimate solution that you all are creating together. And it creates more predictability for everyone. The most that I've seen throughout my time in agency life is, for folks, and especially folks that are not, that haven't necessarily gone through design process, it is very scary for them to be in that unpredictable place. Designers kind of like to be in this place where they're figuring out, how do I move something that's very ambiguous in a problem set to something that feels predictable, that feels like it's pushing the business in the right direction for them. And for us, we're okay with the fact when we're starting out and we don't know answers to things. A lot of non-designers are not okay with that. So being able to give them confidence along the way through here are the activities we're going to do. Here's what we're planning to learn from it. We're okay if we need to pivot and move in a different direction. I think that makes everyone feel better. And in my opinion, that process is articulating the value of design at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, definitely involving the client in the process will go a long way, especially when things like user research that they didn't know. They thought they knew the product, but after they hear how people respond to it, they know, oh, why this is valuable. I will also add that dumbing down the language or having a layman term for different things is going to be very important too. Sometimes we're very deep in the work and we've been in this industry for a while. It's very hard for us to describe something to someone totally new to this field. So that's what I sometimes need to do in my organization is, if this person has no experience in design, how do I tell them why I'm doing what I do? So definitely echo a lot with what you said, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that they understand the value that they get out of the process as well. How does it tie back to the things that they care about? And in some way or another, I always believe that the design project that you're working on should tie back to business goals and things like that.
Yep.
I can build on that. What you were just saying, Drew, I agree with 100%. And I really feel like value is in the eye of the beholder, right? So the person that you're talking to, just like user-centered design, like the way you articulate the value of design, really you need to understand where they're coming from and, why are you there talking with them about design and trying to help them understand the value of design. In an agency setting, you're much more likely, as I recall, it's been a while, but as I recall, you're much more likely to be talking to someone who's approaching you because they see the value of design. right? They already are almost sold. They don't know exactly why necessarily, or you'll have various levels of understanding of what they're going to get and what kind of value design provides. But I think a really important contrast within a sort of in-house ecosystem within a large corporation is you're interacting with people that may or may not care about design at all, right? And sometimes that's okay, right? And you know, you don't need to make everyone a design evangelist, but you know, I think for the folks that understand or are interested in understanding the value of design, you have more of an opportunity to take them on that journey and bring them into the process the way that Drew was saying. In other cases, if you said, hey, you know, I'm going, this person, I want to, you know, turn them into a design advocate, and they're like over in this, and they're like unwilling, you know, you're going to build an enemy of design from an unwilling participant.
Yep.
So I think that it's just really important to as you're understanding the value of design, like seeing where you think people are on that spectrum of, you know, like, hey, I don't even know why design is involved in this process. Usually they'll learn later and be happy that we were. But you know, there's times when people are just like, why do we need design? That's going to slow us down, right? Because it's like, I already have my PowerPoint mock-up. What else do you need, team, right, to get this built? All the way, and I'm joking mostly, but you know, to teams that think of the value of design as being, you know, okay, well, I need my idea rendered on a screen, and you know how to use, you know, Sketch or Figma or whatever. So some people think that design's value is that. So wherever people are coming into an interaction with design, like meet them where they're at and then help move them along that spectrum, right? And so almost the user-centered design within you know, of design evangelism is just helping to understand where each person is and moving them a little further down, right? And helping them understand at least at Verizon, we're very results-oriented, very data-driven company. So how do we help them understand the value that we added to the result and the success of the work?
Yeah, that's very true. In a way, you're treating them as your user. What do they need? What are their traits, and what kind of language will resonate with them? And start there. Totally agree. You cannot just reach full maturity after a couple of days, right? You have to meet them where they are and slowly tag them along the journey. So definitely makes a lot of sense.
Because I think a lot of the time we frame the value of design in terms of what is the value for a business, right? But if you frame the value of design for that individual, like it's very much like, how are you going to help me accomplish my job, right? And make me look like a rock star, right? And so just like, I think we need to look at both sides of it when we talk about, you know, what is the value of design? I think you sell, you know, the value of design to a company, but you have to introduce the value of the design to an individual.
Yeah, and the more problem you solve for an individual, the more allies you bring along the way too. So that's kill two birds in one stone. Great. Well, let's move on to the second topic, which is kind of related to the first one. This is about evaluating the impact of your design work so that you got buy-in from your articulating the value. How do you then make sure that your design work actually, the value is realized? Sometimes it's not that obvious, right? Compared to sales where it's very obvious, black and white, whether they hit a number or not. But for design, it's not usually that tangible. Maybe Alexa can start this one.
Sure, happy to. So I think, you know, as I was mentioning, the impact of anything that we do at Verizon and our scale is something that's measured. So we have a lot of data that we can use to, you know, see like what is the financial impact of having this, you know, accordion menu open or closed. Like literally we can test things like that and see like massive impact, right? That's a real example. But I think like there's the impact financially that you'll see on work. But I think the focus that is most interesting to me is understanding like the impact on culture and the impact on partnership and mindsets, and the evolution of the way of working and continuing sort of on the design maturity curve and sort of customer experience maturity curve of companies. So I really look at the impact there, and measuring it is hard, but there are I guess when you get like at the sort of a broad corporate level, there are different consulting firms that will do surveys that are kind of benchmarking across like where are you on a maturity curve and things like that. But I think you see it more like with the partners that you've been working with as you move forward.
Yeah, I can respond from my side of things. I would say that for us, it's a project by project basis or a client by client basis. You're constantly switching clients or switching projects. And for evaluating the impact of design, I agree with a lot of what Alexa said. And there's obvious ways that you can do it from a tangible standpoint of KPI metrics, quantitative research, qualitative research. I agree that I'm more interested in the cultural impact. And, if we're working on a project, can we see, even in the middle of the project doesn't have to end to evaluate this. Even in the middle, can you see that the teams you're working with, maybe your closest team of client companions, are they working in a different style? Do they enjoy that style that's kind of being dictated by a design process? Are they talking about that with other colleagues or other groups in terms of ways to approach different projects? Are you brought on as a consultant to help give advice elsewhere in the business? I think these are all ways that we can measure whether or not the impact has been good here. Obviously, getting hired for an extension project or a different project with a different group is an obvious metric for us. But there are a lot of factors involved in that. I think the other side of it for us is, have we done our jobs to build a better culture in our design agency through the design work that we're doing together? Have our own designers really worked towards building their careers? Have they done so in a way that feels supportive of one another? Do we have learnings that we can pass on to other teams or the studio at large? So there's a lot of different perspectives you can look at this through.
Got it. So not only the actual product or services you're designing for, but the people and the stakeholders surrounding that, the impact there sometimes is not that directly related to the product, but other people. That makes sense.
I just want to build one last thing. I think both Drew and I, our answers kind of go back to the mission of transforming business through design, right? Like there's the design of the thing that you're making, but then there's the process of design that helps businesses actually evolve and change and grow to just be better places for people to work, better places for consumers to buy products from, things like that.
Got it. Yeah, and just curious about Drew's scenario in agency. For client engagements where you do some sort of exploratory work where there's not necessarily a product, or when you design a product, it's not built yet as part of the engagement, what would be some typical ways of telling the client this is done and making sure that this is to their expectation?
Yeah, I mean, really it depends on the type of project that we're working on. If you're looking at a project that involves more of research and strategy up front, and let's say we're not even designing a screen, I think the end of that project typically ends up being, have we created opportunities that didn't exist before to allow them to invest in for their business? those opportunities could be a digital product. It could be something that is physical and offline, or it could be a combination of those things. That feels to me like a good end cap on a very good project of, we learned something about the market that you're looking to engage with in some way. We've come back with insights, and we found a way to make those insights actionable through a variety of different opportunities that have trade-offs. And, you know, throughout business, there have to be decisions about what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. And there are trade-offs and consequences to all of those decisions. So helping our client navigate the waters of figuring out why one opportunity may be better than another, or in some cases, why it's better to do one opportunity now versus another opportunity like a year from now or 2 years from now. That's really helpful at the end of that type of project, which is, I believe, is kind of the one you were asking about, more so around like early stage type of engagements.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Well, so we cover the value design and the measuring of that. Let's zoom in a little bit in terms of the day-to-day for design leaders. It's one thing when you, from IC to design leaders, one thing you will face is you start dealing with way more stakeholders, and in Drew's case, different clients asking for businesses and making sure you retain them and so on. Just here to see both of you, if you have any tips you can share when it comes to managing stakeholders and clients, or you could share maybe some most challenging experience you ever experienced, or how did you get out of that?
I suppose I could start. I have to think about that last point for a little bit. I think, you know, to kind of build off some stuff that Alexa said before, getting a good read on how involved your clients want to be in the project that you're working on. And, you know, at first, like there are some clients that obviously hire you, and there are clients that are on their team that will work with you every day. But there's a bunch of other influencers outside of that core group that could easily influence the project and decide whether or not it continues to go or doesn't. And I think it's important to understand from any of these different cohorts, how involved do they want to be, and how involved should they be for the project to be successful. So I think for us, we're constantly taking a temperature read of who's involved, who should be involved, when can we get them involved in certain key areas to get their buy-in along the way, so it feels like our project and not a project just given to Grand Studio. And recalibrating kind of that set, because, you know, clients, everyone's busy. Clients have a million different projects that they're working on. We're working on one project the entire time. And I think that's something that our team always discusses about, that, like, you know, we're working on one thing for 8 hours a day. Our clients are moving between all of these meetings. We get them for 1 hour every 2 days or 3 days or something like that. How can we make that most beneficial for their time so they feel confident in our ability to push this forward? I probably have other tips, but I think that's my main one, of like just getting a temperature read on how to continue to interact with them.
Yeah, and I would echo the sentiment of share the credit, right? Just make sure that it's seen as a joint effort, and that needs to go beyond showmanship. Like, that needs to be a reality, right? Acknowledge that they're a stakeholder. They're in the room with you solving this problem for a reason, and really, you know, valuing what contribution they're bringing. I think the role design can play in a room is really to create possibilities, right? And I think acknowledging design's ability to create the possibilities and bring options to the table, not just bring solutions, but bring options that can be discussed, and where, you know, design can help facilitate choice and facilitate trade-offs and facilitate, you know, additional questions that can help bring the knowledge that we need from, you know, the stakeholders and clients out in a way that can help guide us all towards the right solution. And it is truly a shared solution at the end of the day when approached like that. To Alan, to your question of, you know, what are some challenging stakeholder scenarios, I would say one of the interesting things about, you know, big company, like big company life, is there are so many people doing so many things, and trying to find the overlaps in those tracks of work, or not trying to find, but just finding overlaps in tracks of work is something that happens occasionally. So it's an interesting situation that we're in on the design team, because we're a bit of an epicenter for being able to see everything before it's on the way out the door, and being able to connect the dots. But I think, versus on the agency side, whoever was your client, they were really responsible for kind of bringing in all the right people. And you just kind of took it, or I would take it for granted, yes, this person's going to bring in the right people, and if they don't, tough luck. That's not a great way to put it, but it wasn't. But I wouldn't necessarily know who I didn't know to be involved in the process, right? Part of the arrangement with an agency contract like that is, there is responsibility of the client to bring in the right people to interact with. In contrast, right? You sort of make your own stakeholder set on work within large companies, and it wasn't until I joined Verizon that I heard stakeholdering used as a verb. It is a normal, everyday word here to use stakeholdering as a word, and it is just the act of going around and socializing things to everyone, to make sure people are aware, make sure that there's alignment, make sure no one else is doing the same thing, and things like that. So there's a lot of stakeholder and kind of client management that happens here, and sometimes it's about helping to make introductions, help stakeholders get to know each other, and realize that they're kind of on the same path.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a trade-off here between the two different environments, where from agency life, you have maybe 10% visibility into what's really happening at the client. As much as you can ask and try and probe and find out, this is kind of how it is sometimes, because you're not living in their world all the time. And, to Alexa's point, you don't know who you don't know sometimes. And I was on a project back in November where the person who hired us set up a whole team to work through it with us. The second week of the project, he was pushed out of the organization through a reorg. And, for some reason that I can't explain, the project continued. And the team that was underneath him, two people of which had just started the week before, had no idea what they were doing. For us, it was a matter of how do we get them to a place of feeling confident to take this and push it forward, because we know after this project ends, there's going to be a whole sort of political jumbling going on behind the scenes to even make it come back one day. And that project ended where some folks came into the final presentation, didn't really like what they saw because they thought their groups were doing the same things, and they weren't, but that's okay. And the nice thing about being a consultant is you can just walk away and go to a different project or go to a different client. And I think that's the obvious main trade-off here, is in consulting, you don't get to see everything. You don't get to go very deep, but you can get a quick mix of what's going on. If you like it, hopefully you can stick around a bit longer. If you don't, you can just move on to something else. And flip side is for in-house, if you really like what you're doing, you like the people that you're working with, you can really go deep in that experience and build your career there. So both are good choices, but for different reasons.
Yeah, totally. And the only other thing I'll add to the conversation is having the right context for the right person is definitely key, right? And I heard from both of you how to maintain the information so that different groups are aware of what's going on and setting the right expectation. You talk to a very high level executive is very different from talking to a different peer that you work with or your direct report. So how do you talk about the same thing and just have different level of detail and the context is definitely something that we always need to be better at, and something that we keep learning every day. So definitely.
Well, one additional thing I'll add, which, is a little, I never thought about it when I was, more on the agency side. when you're on the agency side, you're controlling the process, and I may be moving a little bit ahead into the next question, Alan, so apologies. But like you're really controlling the process, and you can control sort of the points of stakeholder communication, right? At large companies, or at least at Verizon, we have there's a lot of just standardized processes, standardized venues to bring things in, right? To help, corral all the all the people that you need to get signed off on a thing. There's sort of forums that you need to like get on the list for, right? And things like that. So because you can imagine with the amount of things going on at a company at any given point in time, if every project team was essentially like going and individually trying to socialize it across the organization, it would be very inefficient. People's calendars can't survive that kind of attack. So there's the stakeholder and management situation is a very very important, very deliberate, very coordinated kind of operation in a large corporation, which is I think really different from how I experienced it on the agency side.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I remember as part of the program last year, someone mentioned that big companies tend to trust outside agencies more than their in-house team somehow. I remember it was probably, don't remember, Google or Facebook, where they hire someone, oh, you're experts, but the in-house are, you're just inside people. So curious to see if, Alexa, you sense that at all, or Drew, maybe you sense that from a different angle, that clients who hire you might have their in-house team, but they actually trust your process more than their in-house folks.
I really want to start on this question, if you don't mind. So, it's such a good question. My opinion is that stakeholders can more directly get what they want when they work with an agency. And so sometimes there's a little bit of like, hey, your project isn't prioritized to be worked on relative to other things that are happening in the company. And they're like, but I have budget and I want to do it. And it's like, well, we have this many resources in-house. So if you have the budget, and it's not prioritized, then, go outside. So I think that
sounds great.
Yeah, and that can work out. It can also create a lot of problems because at the end of the day, the same development resources that also don't have it prioritized, get the design, and they're like, wait, but where's that going to go? So I think that there's some interesting challenges there. But I will hire agencies to support our team, and I will do it for pieces of work that are, more self-contained and more things that are maybe a little further out in terms of the vision state that we're looking at, and trying to help something that pushes it forward. We do have some agency partners that are, highly ingrained in delivery processes, but that's less the norm.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, probably shouldn't say this, but I wouldn't say that agencies are any better or worse than in-house resources to be able to do some of these efforts. I think for one thing that, if you hire an agency, you're hiring someone or a group of people to have focused time on something. Whereas a lot of times in in-house, and this may not be every place, but their time is just split between a lot of different things, a lot of different projects. So having the focus time is really important. And then I think either from the fresh thinking side, it's more or less of the fact that agencies have seen perhaps competitors or different, the same challenge through different industries, and can kind of bring some interesting ideas there. And also the thought of being naive to everything that is happening or things that have been established in the client side can be helpful at times. They start to question things that folks on in-house never seem to question, because maybe they questioned it 5 years ago when they joined and that got broken. And then it's like, this is just the way it is. So, having a group come in and just re-question even the simplest of things sometimes can be really helpful to their process and their thinking. I also think this is why sometimes in-house places hire folks for director positions like out of crazy industries, because they want to shake things up and have different, fresh perspectives on things. And there's a trade-off to that as well.
Yeah, I learned a lot from both of your answers, so thank you for entertaining me with that. We talk about a bunch of different things. We actually heard what applies to agencies, what applies in-house, or sometimes apply to both. So the next question is really to have a chance for Alexa and Andrew to talk about, in terms of these two environments and design leadership, what do you think apply in both scenarios, and what really is the big difference and we need to be watch out for when leading within one environment versus the other? Maybe Alexa, you can start this one.
Sure. I'm going to start with something that is the same. I think in both situations, you need to still make sure you spend time networking, right? One of the things I don't miss so much from from agency life is the sales process and having to go through that. But it doesn't, like, the networking side of just your career is still something that's important and well intact, and the informal stakeholder management that happens via networking and making those connections, it's essential to getting work done, having those informal connections. So that's something that I think is similar between the two. I think one of the things that I would expect, from in-house is that you have a lot more control over the outcomes. I would say in some cases that is true. I would say you have a lot more accountability. You have full accountability for the outcomes of quality, of condition, but I wouldn't say that you necessarily have full control, because there's a lot of people involved in the process, and sometimes things don't necessarily show up the way you want. And so I can remember in agency days, sometimes there would be things that would maybe not go into production as we had expected, right? And you still get those surprises sometimes here, like on the in-house side. I would say one of the biggest differences for me that I think is really exciting is what I was mentioning earlier, is the ability to connect the dots between different parts of the organization. And again, why I think networking is so important. Just the ability to hear about what's happening in one place and what's happening in another place. And I really see it as my job as a designer in customer experience, to knit those things together in a way where a customer can't tell that people are having all these separate conversations. And so that's I think pretty different versus being able, and like it's a really long game. I'm for 4 years I've been working on the same project, basically trying to elevate our customer experiences across our sales and service platforms. And I've got a long road to go still, but I'm massively proud of our accomplishments along the way. But it's a really different time horizon than any of the projects that I ever worked on at Moment, even accounts that were several years. It's still a really different kind of pace.
Definitely, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's really a breadth versus depth type of scenario, whichever one you're more attracted to at this point in your career. For agency life, for the most part, you get the breadth across industries. I mean, it really depends on how projects come in and they're staffed and that type of thing. But for the most part, the design of it is to move from project to project and hopefully from domain space to domain space so that you can learn more about like how does healthcare treat these types of situations versus financial services or food services or insurance. And what you learn from all of that is you learn that a lot of folks are dealing with a lot of the same issues, but just expressed in different ways within their own domain space. And that's a really cool pattern to kind of pick up from agency life. However, like as Alexa pointed out, there's not the depth in any one place unless the agency you go to is like heavily focused in one domain space versus another. And connecting the dots through an organization, of course, you're not going to get that through agency life. Agency life is really about connecting the dots through the industries and thinking about where does design fit into certain industries that are ready for design process to take over on things. I also think, depending on the company that you go to, agency like can offer you an easier way of switching the type of design project you want to be on. So if you're doing product design, you've been doing that for a while and you want to start thinking about research and service design, like there's the potential to do that. There might be that potential to do that in-house too, but it depends. You could be working on the same project for a year doing registration for an app. Or you could be doing something that's very holistic and lateral across a lot of different groups. So I think those opportunities are worth exploring. And I think you can find a lot of similarities because of the amount of opportunities for designers these days with in-house and agency are abundant. But those are things to kind of think about. What kind of breadth and what kind of depth are you interested in exploring in your career?
Well, one thing I'd like to add is, I think I in general agree with that assessment, and we definitely have a lot more depth, in terms of connection to the work. However, I would argue that in some in-house environments, and I would argue Verizon as well as environments, the breadth is actually quite substantial. Where it's narrow is you really need to love the color palette and if you don't like Helvetica, you really should not be working at Verizon. But a chance to work on IVR systems or apps or websites or retail environments, doing service design, doing voice interaction design, the brand interaction design. There's a really large ecosystem of different kinds of touch points to be designed, and the service design to connect the dots between all of those. It's a really broad landscape, and so there is a lot of variety even within some internal or some in-house situations. But you really got to love the brand. You really have to love the brand system and feel okay working with the same color palette day to day.
Yeah, I think you hit on a good point. I think a lot depends on how design is structured in an organization. So there are organizations where design is seen as an overarching layer across a lot of different units. And in that case, yeah, you would be able to freely switch about different types of products and things like that. There's other organizations where design is built into a business unit. And so you have to decide, do I want to be in this line of business? How easy is it to switch out of this line of business to a different line of business? And even within a single line of business, you could be doing service design or product design or conversational design, whatever it may be. But yeah, a lot of it does depend how the whole thing is structured and what their goals are for the design practice moving forward.
Yeah, that's a great call out, Drew. And yeah, I think that's a good point for anyone to call, centralized design or functions within a in-house team versus more distributed in-house teams. You're going to have different kinds of experiences.
For sure. I feel like we can talk about this for one more hour, but we definitely need to move on. In this spirit of giving different context or different amount of information based on scenario, let's do this one quickly. If you could just say one attribute the top one that you think that design leader needs to have to be successful, and one sentence about why that is the case will be very helpful. Drew, maybe you can start with this one.
Yeah, I have so many, but I have to choose one. Like, what's the broadest one that encompasses a lot of them? I think supportive is a trait that comes to mind for me in being a design leader. It's important to kind of lead from behind and enable other folks on your teams to do their best work and to help them when they fall down, essentially, and to make them better designers. And to a point Alexa said earlier, even with your clients, if you can help to be supportive in ways that help push other people forward, everybody wins. So if I had to choose one trait, that feels to me kind of probably the most important.
Great.
And I'm going to say one that I would probably have not ever said on the agency side, but the thing that I think is really important for a leader to be successful is saying no. Being able to say no to requests that are coming towards you and your team for things that don't make sense, would break the experience, aren't on brand, right? There's always going to be people acting entrepreneurially within the organization, trying to, get an idea out that they think is a great idea. But again, you have to say no. You have to be, you have to uphold the integrity of the overall system of experiences to, keep the guard up and make sure that, not pleasing this one person that you're saying no to is ultimately going to, help, improve the lives and experiences of lots of other people using the products, and, improving the quality of life of, folks on the team that are building and designing these products, as opposed to, as a design leader, if you say yes to something that you don't believe in, and then the team is stuck designing something that they don't believe in, like, that's not where you want to be, and that's not where your customers want to be interacting.
Yeah, for sure. You cannot be a people pleaser anymore when you have the leadership position. So I'll definitely agree with that. Well, thank you so much for all the great insights. We're going to open up for Q&A. Maybe Luna, if there's any questions from the group, happy to ask that to Drew and Alexa. And for anyone still on the line, feel free to unmute and ask questions too if you're open to that.
Gada did propose a question, which is, what is the link or the correlation between innovation and design?
I'd say that highly depends on how you define both of those words. Gosh, innovation is such a loaded term for some people. But I will say my view of design is more than execution or a coat of paint or anything like that. So in my mind, design allows for people to look at business, potential products and services in a way of what could it be versus what it is. And in that respect, I think you can create engagements that allow you to get the heart towards where is it that we want to go? How could we potentially get there? Are there certain products or services or different decisions, policy decisions that we should make in order to do that? Design can help structure a path through all of that. And I think an outcome of that is building innovation, is pushing a business towards a place that they've never been before. So I don't really know if that answers the question, but I hope it gets somewhat close.
I like Drew's answer.
Same here.
Oh, this is Alexa question coming up.
Yeah, Ben just proposed another question. What was one of the most surprising things in your experience of switching from agency to in-house or in-house to agency? Thank you, Ben.
Good question. I think the scale of it is really, at least in my experience, was the most shocking factor. And honestly, that doesn't necessarily have to do with agency versus in-house, because there are in-house companies that are, the size of the agency that I was at, and there are agencies that are, the size that Verizon is. So, but just, I think moving into something of such a large scale was the most noticeable or surprising thing, and the kind of impacts that has on the way you work and the way you collaborate with folks.
So we've got another one from Douglas. From your relative perspective, share a great experience, worst experience dealing with client versus dealing with customer.
I think I take a lot of joy in small moments with clients to build better trust and rapport. And, for me, this used to be a lot easier in 2019, but like just going out and getting drinks with a client and just kind of understanding what is it that they want to do through this project, where do they want to go, just building some shared understanding. And at the end of the day, like, we're all going to work, we're working on projects, we're working with teams, and we want to have fun with the people that we're working with. And the more that you can find common ground, it always made me feel really happy and great to kind of come to work every day, to feel like we're all moving towards the direction that we believe in, regardless of the fact that we work at two different companies. Alexa, you're a mute, by the way, but if you're still thinking, I can cheer up some time.
Thank you. Yes. No, I'm getting hung up on the word dealing with, right? And in my most positive view, I'm like, oh, we're not dealing with our partners and our customers like they're, but in some cases you really do feel like you're managing. There's like stakeholder management, and then there's managing stakeholders that can sometimes be disruptive in ways that are not helpful to moving the work forward. But I'm trying to think of just a specific great experience or worst experience that.
I mean, I can think of a bit poor experience if you need some more time.
Yeah, please.
I was on a project with a large healthcare company where in one of the business lines of business, they wanted to introduce a separate new experience design practice. And we have a lot of experience in figuring out how to set up an experience design practice. And the challenge here was, how do we do it for them? How do we build that slowly for them? And the guy that brought us in had really strong points of view on how to shoehorn that in. And we kept having to try and roll him back and figure out ways of like, okay, let's build partnerships with these groups. A lot of them were product people. Let's introduce design in a way that can help them for their interests so that they can embrace design and see the value of design, leading back up to our first topic. And he wasn't really about that. And I think the more that we went through the project, we had realized that it wasn't, the organization or the business line wasn't structured in a way where design could be successful just yet. Simply because everyone else who wasn't a designer did not have any incentive to care about design in their work, even though there was a lot of crossover with design. Their bonuses weren't based on customer satisfaction or qualitative research coming from the things that they would generate. Their bonuses are based on, did they get things out on time and under budget? And for us, it was, worst experience of dealing with clients. It was very hard to communicate that across the line once we figured that out, of this is the way that your organization actually works. Let's find ways to kind of work within that and try to change the game from within. And our client was unfortunately too stubborn to kind of move in that direction. I don't think they've really moved since. So it's hard to kind of go through that sometimes. And you don't know that going into the project often.
Yeah, that's a good example. And here's where I have to say no to more questions because we're a little bit over time. Luna, do you want to wrap us up here?
Absolutely, I would love to. Thank you so much for inspiring you both. Alan, I was actually hoping to hear a little bit about your perspective because I know you always have amazing insights, but I will save that for May when we are going to be having you as a panelist because it's always so inspiring. You both know because you work with him. So again, just to wrap up, I don't want to take anybody's time. We're over time now. It's starting on May 9th. So we have a little over a month and a half to begin the classes. It's going to be amazing. We have such, how can I even say that? A solid group of designers joining us, to say at least, like considering Bruce Mao, Birgit Mager, Stephen Gates, so many other people joining us from Asia and Europe. I am super excited to take the course again, and I will, and most likely Alan as well. We have global masterclass and local workshops, so we always have both perspectives of what's happening globally, but also bringing that to a more local context and having workshops that are very much focused in new frameworks and exercises for us to tangibilize great concepts such as what is design leadership and how do we do design leadership in a practical manner. I do have a special coupon code for those that are here with us today. Is a 15% off discount. If you don't have time to scan the code now, just email me and we can move forward with whatever it is that to be made to accommodate your needs. And this is our ebook. This is the first version ebook, and we have a new one coming up in about 3 to 4 weeks. So if you scan this one, you're most definitely gonna be pinged once we have the second edition coming up. I'm super excited because the answers that the Global Masterclass is giving us is like mind-blowing. And that's it for tonight. I really appreciate your time, Alexa and Andrew. Alan, thank you for putting this together. And I'll see you, Alan, in 2 weeks from now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for joining. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.